This is Political Core, the non-PC edition of The Aaron Cruz Show, where you decide the topics. The only place where you get the news you want from the people you trust. We are your balanced and accurate information resource.
Good evening and welcome to the Aaron Cruz Show, coming to you from Palm Springs, California. This is Political Core. I'm your hostess, Aaron Cruz. Thank you for joining me. Tonight's topic is a doozy. All right, media crybabies. That's what we're gonna call them, media crybabies. And we're really going to talk about Sessions versus the coup of the left, and Harris, Senator Harris, failure to maintain composure. All right. I am just beside myself about this whole ordeal, what we're seeing going on right now. And I'm sure that you are too. We have a lot of ground to cover. I also want to cover Obamacare a little bit. I have an update from the Heritage Foundation. We had our conference call today, which was really great, talking about some ground that we've made. We, meaning conservatives. And as a nation, we'll all benefit from some of the things that are going on that are positive. So we'll make sure and we'll touch on that. But now I want to go into this a little bit. We're going to start with the media crybabies. Out of this world. I mean, I'm just not sure what people are made up of today, because it would be one thing to be upset and just be very frank about, the concerns and be, pragmatic about it and what have you. But what happened, okay, is we see that certain news organizations are putting out information, absolutely just feeding the public information that's not supporting the interests of the United States. As a matter of fact, it's negating and it's making a bad impression on our president, on our administration. And if it were just politics, it would be one thing. But really, it's a full-blown attempt to tear down the presidency from underneath it itself, using media and potentially false information. And in many cases, what we're seeing is that the information turns out to be false. Using unnamed sources, which in many cases, that is absolutely what the news and media do. They need to use unnamed sources to protect the people who are giving them information. Now, those are people who are giving them information that might be afraid for their lives or other things, other reasons, and in a way that would benefit our nation and because the information needs to get to the public. Now, what we see the news organizations doing right now is literally taking information from purportedly or reportedly, and we can get into this. Oh my gosh, I just kind of pieced this together today. They're taking information from individuals who shouldn't be giving out this classified and privileged sort of information. Information that is needed to be kept secret and on the DL or down low, because it could potentially harm our nation. And they're taking that information using unnamed sources, and then they're putting it out there for the American public. But they're not putting it out there because the American public should know or needs to know. They're putting it out there to undermine the leaders of this great nation, the entire administration. It's just outrageous what they're doing. And as we saw in the hearings the other day, I think it was last Thursday with Comey, he sat in that chair and he basically said, in no uncertain terms, that he made those memos so he could save them for later, for a later date, for a later time. And you know what he said he was going to do? He said he was going to give them to his friend, and he did, to give to media. Well, 1 + 1 is not 3, 1 + 1 is 2. So what we have is a media who is taking this sort of privileged information or leaked information or whistleblower information. It's not even whistleblower information, because that's an attempt to expose maybe an organization that's been doing wrongdoings against its employees or hurting the general public. No, that's not what this is. So what we have is we have Comey admitting that he's given this information out to the press, and we have the press on the other side saying that they're taking unnamed sources. Now, I want to tell you what. If the press is taking classified or privileged information that should not be released to the public, and releasing it to the public for somebody's political gain or for the undermining of our great nation, we've got a problem. Okay? And so then when we see the media get smacked down, just smack flat down, right off of its podium, these are people who are front line sitters in nearly every news presser or any kind of release that happens at the White House. We see them sitting front row all the time, getting their questions answered. Then we see as President Trump comes in, we see him just start asking questions, taking questions from people that are farther in the back because he says fake news. We're tired of the same old people feeding the same old BS. Well, President Trump very rightly gives open forum and says, okay, let's go ahead and ask this guy over here or that guy over there. And maybe they're not a notable, top of the line front seater regular that gets asked questions. Well, that's a good thing, right? As populace, we want to hear everyone. We don't need to just hear the Communist News Network or the other three-letter acronym networks, right? We want to hear everyone. It's in our benefit to hear all approaches. In any case, so President Trump starts asking questions farther back. And then our news networks, the top tier ones, are all pouty-wouty about it. They're, he's not asking us questions. He's not taking our questions. He's not answering our questions. Well, their questions maybe aren't relevant, or they're old questions, or they're questions that aren't really getting to the point, or in the benefit of our nation, right? It's if your questions aren't the types of questions that need to be asked, okay, maybe that's not for the president to decide. Maybe you feel like you as a news network should be able to ask whatever you want and get an answer. But, he also, as the president, don't waste his time. The American public wants to know certain things, and it doesn't care to hear other things. And you should be asking real relevant information. So these same people who are sitting front row are upset because the people a couple rows back are now getting, a little bit more ground in terms of questions. And then, not only to mention that, I know that several kind of more independent news organizations have wanted in on these pressers. So then they say, okay, well, we're going to let you guys in. And then the other news networks try to beat them down and basically say, oh, you're not real news, right? And then we see Facebook come out and say, well, we're going to help censor news. We see a whole huge kind of black cloud. It's called the media cloud, the big black cloud just floating over our process, right? And just trying to rain on the Trump parade. Well, you know what? The wind is going to start blowing, and we're going to see new weather coming soon, all right? And what we've seen is just that. So Trump comes in, blows them all away. Just whoosh, right? Imagine that. Just blows them all away. And now, because these organizations, in particular this one organization, has been literally moved to the back of the bus, okay? He was put from front row to near back row and made to sit there, and this guy cried, okay? He cried. Jim Acosta cried, okay? I mean, in what world, in what realm do you want to take your serious news from the President of the United States, from a man that cannot get his act together, all right? He can't get his act together to get his stories appropriate, to be able to, measure what should be released to the public and what shouldn't, because as a journalist, I think you should be able to determine, hey, if you're given certain information, maybe that shouldn't make it to the public. Maybe you should be using your judgment as a influencer of the people to say, this isn't inappropriate. And what you've done and what you've given me, while I think you've had the best interests of the country in mind, it's not right. And I can't I just can't do this. This is not ethical. Because I think these people are bound to certain, ethical standards. And so this guy, I don't even want to call him a dude, okay? I've met, young guys and popular people, and they're kind of like, California boys. This guy is not a dude. He's not even a man, all right? He's a little crybaby sitting in the front row, was demoted to the back row, and now he's crying about it. I have talked to, I don't know, dozens of people, and every single one of them is sick and tired of what media has been doing. They're sick and tired of it. They want the news. They want the facts. We already get enough online. They want to get down to the nitty-gritty facts. And I think that's what the American public deserves. They don't need little crying pansies who have been moved to the back row. And I hate to call them that, but it is what it is. Man up. Okay? Man up. We don't want to listen to somebody who can't hold their own. Sure, you might be upset, but what you did, Jim, is you did the wrong thing. And I think that we need to open up seats for people who want to do the right thing. And it's not about, political party. It's not about left and right. It's not about who's going to, rah-rah the president. Because I'm not saying that journalists should just rah-rah America, rah-rah the president. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have to have the ability to be objective, and you've got to have the ability to, when you're provided and presented certain information, to weigh the cost benefit and whether or not this certain information is ethical to release to the general public. Okay? And well, Jimmy boy, you got moved to the back row. Stop your crying. We're all tired of these pansy children and crybabies. And then we have, of course, the awesome. I am so taken aback. I love Sessions, and there are a few things I don't agree with about him, and I'll probably get flack for that one. But overall, he's just a stand-up guy, and his perspective is generally spot on. I really appreciate how reserved he is, and he likes to make sure that he takes the time to really think and process and give information that's accurate and delivered in a manner which, one, we can understand, two, that's appropriate, especially given his position, and he's sensitive to the needs of the nation. And I think that's vital, especially given his AG position now. So if you weren't aware, or if you haven't had a chance, if you haven't even opened up a television station or the internet today, AG Sessions sat before the almighty committee today for the Comey hearings. And I'm going to tell you what, hot dang, this is something else. I am stunned. So I don't know if many of you have followed or ever have followed the McCarthy hearings of way back. Okay, there were the hearings that were done in a chase of the communists that we now see are actually really real. Well, that was supposedly a witch hunt. Well, it was not really a witch hunt because those were hidden for 50 years. Okay, we know now, looking back, hindsight's 2020. There are communists among us, and they're rampant, unfortunately. And many of them are in our Congress right now, as we've seen with Harris. Excuse me. I'm not coughing really. I'm just coughing because that woman Harris. So in any case, our hearings went on today, and it was an eventful, I think, procedure that happened. Many people questioned Sessions, and we made, I think, really great ground on the fact that Sessions is strong. He's strong in his leadership, he's strong in his policy, he's strong in his values, and his in terms of his moral compass and what needs to be done for these United States of America, this man will not drop this nation under and run her over with the bus, okay? You know, everybody says, oh, you got ran over with the bus, you know, just run him over with the bus. No, he will never do that. He will guard her and take care of her and guide her and protect her. And what I'm seeing today, at least a half a dozen times, he stated in a manner by which I think he was so strong, he basically said that, look, the information, we need to be tighter about information. These leaks, the things that have been going on, they can no longer continue. They can't continue. And I don't think, basically he almost said that without Comey in here, they won't be happening anymore, which is really quite shocking to me. But he affirmed and he went on about how we, as different government organizations, we need to be tighter. We have to follow procedures, follow policy, and make sure that we adhere to the different practices that and things that are in place, because it's there to guard our great nation. And I think that he was on to something there. I mean, it's so dang basic. And I know you and I have talked about this several times, and we obviously on our forum online, we always talk about this and how, you know, these different individuals, they share information, and it's not for the benefit of our great country. It's not. It's to tear her down from within. And so nothing was more clear about that when we saw that Mr. Warner, okay, Mr. Warner approached Sessions in the hearings, and he essentially suggested that because you are in a reception room. Now, wait a minute. Let me back up. It was said that Comey had said that he was never with any Russians, okay? That he didn't talk to any Russians. And then later on, not Comey, sorry, Sessions said that he wasn't with any Russians, that he hadn't met with any Russians. And Sessions later on came back and he said, well, actually, I need to correct the record. Yes, I had talked to, I think it was 2 ambassadors that he said. And then there was another instance, which they're referring to as the Mayflower incident, where he had had a meeting. Well, come on. Do they think we're this stupid as a people? Do they think that really Sessions is this dumb? What it was is that Sessions was at a reception that was put on, and it was put on by someone, and he had no control over seating. He had no control, neither did the president, no control over seating or arrangements or anything. Everybody was invited. Everything was set up. And these people were all there together. The reception was, you know, not that many people, and apparently it was said by somebody, anonymous sources, wonder who that was, that Sessions had a meeting with a Russian somebody or other. Okay, we're talking about a public event, okay? Well, not a public event, but, you know, here you are amongst your peers in a reception, in a room, you know, maybe you're having appetizers or hors d'oeuvres, or you're having a glass of wine, or whatever it might be. And in Trump's case, he doesn't drink, but you're amongst your peers, you're amongst certain individuals, and you're networking, essentially. The room is so, I mean, yeah, there aren't a lot of people, but it's so big and vast. I mean, you're trying to talk, and, you know, you're getting ready to move on to the next stage of the event. They're calling this a meeting, okay? This reception is a meeting. And it turns out, as Comey, I've got Comey on the brain, boop, boop. As Sessions says it, I mean, he doesn't recall interacting with Russians. I mean, if he were, wouldn't it be pleasantries? I mean, you have so-and-so standing right next to you, have so-and-so standing behind you. I mean, it's not like you could go, hey, yeah, how about that uranium deal Hillary did? Yeah, you got any insider information on that? I mean, come on. I don't know what they might have talked about, had they talked, and I doubt they talked. But my point is such close quarters. But this Mr. Warner suggested that because you are in a reception room with that someone in question, you now have a meeting. I mean, I just don't get it. I think that Mr. Warner thinks that because maybe he has loose conversations, that everyone is like him, and everyone else has loose lips. I don't know what to say about it, because for Warner to suggest that because Sessions was in a room with a Russian, I mean, I'm Prussian. Of course, that's not even Russian. That's, from, anyway, we could go into that. But I mean, because my family is from this or that, or because this is, I mean, so, okay, well, these are dignitaries. These are different kinds of high-level people from all over the world, I'm sure, but because one of them happened to be Russian and in the same room, somehow that puts Sessions in question. Well, then wouldn't that put our president in question? Wouldn't that put everybody in question that talked to that person? Now, maybe the question might be, why are they so concerned that Sessions had a conversation with this person? Wouldn't they more so be concerned with every single person who came in contact with that individual? And wouldn't there be a question as to why that individual was invited to this particular event? I mean, it shouldn't be that you put our AG, current AG, on the line for something like that. Now, the bigger thing is that not only is he suggesting this thing because you're in the same room as a person, now, I mean, somehow you're concealing something. I mean, he went on to say that in intelligence community, don't you have certain things where notes are passed off, or this information or intel, and it's kind of this clandestine type operation where, nobody really knows what's going on. It's amongst the public, and so therefore it wouldn't be noticed. Nobody would assume that something was happening. I mean, he is suggesting some wild stuff here. Okay, stuff as he even mentions James Bond and kind of, I'm sure that these things happen, but this is just outlandish, especially given that Sessions had recused himself from anything relating to the campaign, right? So for me, this is sort of kind of this. It's kind of this area where you just wonder, what are they getting at? Because if anything, they should be going after little Madame Hillary Clinton and her relations with the Russians, and why this is all conspiring. Why did the leaks? Why did the hackings happen? Why was the infrastructure so torn down that certain individuals could penetrate? Why was it that we would be so deeply concerned now with this kind of DNC hack? And why was the DNC system that weak? Okay, and who was in charge at the time? I'll tell you, Obama was in charge. I'll tell you, it's Lynch was in charge. I mean, we have certain people who were in charge at those periods of time. Why aren't they the ones here being questioned? Because I'm going to tell you, Sessions, he said he had nothing to do with anything, that he wasn't involved with any of this. And I believe him, frankly, from the way he looked, from the way he spoke, the way he answered his questions. But now we have, undoubtedly, a group of people who want our government to go down. Okay? We do. Plain and simple, we do. And those people are not friends of our great nation. And unfortunately, they are in our government. That's a pretty bold statement, but I would stand behind that. And one of the reasons why I say that is because when Ron Wyden opens up and he says Americans want access to privileged information, they deserve it. I'm going to tell you, as an American citizen, there are certain things that go on in our government that I don't need information to. I mean, I just don't. And I would expect that my government officials would keep information to themselves, which they didn't want foreign governments to know. I mean, it's just in the interest of the people, okay? And I think everything has a time and a place. But he says that. He says Americans want access to privileged information. No, not where national security is concerned. And the people who say that they do should be wondered about. They really should be looked into, because why would you want to put our nation at risk? It just doesn't make sense. Not if you love your great nation. And then, he goes on to say that Jeff Sessions is stonewalling. Okay, stonewalling the committee by saying that he can't answer certain questions. Well, look, He said that he's recused himself. He doesn't want any information about the campaign or investigation. He's already said that he's had no involvement. He doesn't have any information. That's not his area, and he doesn't want anything to do with that. And now you're questioning him on it and asking him questions about it? Well, what part of that don't you understand? It's very, very simple. And so basically, Sessions comes back and he says that he's following procedures. Okay? And you could see Ron Wyden. He was just squirming. He was so beside himself. He couldn't stand that Sessions, he would stick to his guns and do his job and say, no, there's procedure, there's protocol. I'm the standing AG. I need to do my job, and my job is this. And not every conversation that I have with the president will be, information that the public should get. That's just how that works. It's not up to me. It's up to the president and other persons within the organization to make that determination whether or not it should be released. Absolutely 100% right on topic. Right on topic. And then Ron Wyden doubles down and quotes tweets by the president. I mean, just reaching. And Jeff Sessions basically he laid into Ron. And Ron came back and he said that there's basically classified problematic details around, around the firing of Comey. And Jeff Sessions basically came around and he said, leaks. Hello. I mean, what more do you need? When a president makes the determination, he doesn't make it lightly. Nothing I think Trump has done, he's made lightly. He comes off as a very people person and light. He's, he's a powerhead. But, I don't think he takes this stuff lightly at all. Not at all. And I'm wondering where, A.G. Lynch is. Why isn't she standing up and being questioned? I want to know where Dana, the prior, prior director AG, is on this. I mean, where are they? So I'm wondering what, by doing this, what are these individuals wanting to get at? Because it doesn't seem like they're really wanting to get at the problem, which is why was the DNC and why were all of these DNC and organizations like it weak enough for the Russians to breach in? And why did the Russians feel that they could penetrate any part of our organization by making contact? And just because Russians make contact with our organizations, okay, does not mean that we had any involvement with them, okay? It doesn't. It really doesn't. And so, I mean, when we look at that and we say, okay, so they tried to talk to our people, or they had a meeting and they wanted to talk about something specific. Our government heads should be smart enough to say, and stop the conversation or shift the conversation. We're not talking about dummies here. These are the top tier people within our organizations that we're talking about. And to suggest that people like Jeff Sessions or the president were inappropriate just because maybe Flynn put himself in a position which was questionable, whatever that might have been, it doesn't mean that our president or Sessions were compromised or inappropriate in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't. And actually, it lends me to believe that these individuals that are coming after this entire administration, because I can tell you it's very, very obvious which ones they are trying to undermine. Our administration, our newly elected and appointed officials, and it's just disgraceful. And like Senator Feinstein, as a matter of fact, she just basically, I mean, if you want to talk about blatant, Senator Feinstein today she just asked very plainly in this hearing, Jeff Sessions, our AG, to violate protocols and policy in his testimony, okay? And she was basically telling him to state inappropriate responses. She wanted a yes or no answer. And he said, I can't tell you that. And she was wanting to know why privileged information was not, handed over. And she says, well, you could just easily say yes or no. And she says, you could just as easily say no. And he says, well, I could, Jeff Sessions says, well, I can just as easily say yes. But to say yes or to say no, both would be violating my job and position and the protocols as AG. And, for me to watch somebody so seasoned as Senator Feinstein, to watch some of these people, which are in our Congress members, sit there and try to get our AG to state things which could put our nation, our great country, the Department of Justice, one of the most important areas of our government, which has been compromised for the entire Obama administration, that's finally in a position where it can start making impact and ruling and doing things that it needs to do to get this country back on track in terms of law, the rule of law, the spirit of law, everything. For them to try to just throw him right under the bus and bait him, blatantly. Well, you could just as easily say no. Well, yes, I could just as easily say yes, he says. That is so bad. So bad. I don't know if I'm conveying this appropriately or not, or in a way which you understand, but for our own people on this committee to sit there and do that, it's just outrageous. And this is why I'm saying that I believe that there is a full-blown coup. And I've said this for months and months and months. I don't know. I think it may have even actually been before. It might have even been in the elections where I was talking about how the rising up of the next powers that be, if they're Republican, there's already, the tearing down from within. They're dividing the conservative party. They're undermining the different authorities and processes from within in an attempt to basically, when the new administration comes in, if it is a Republican Party, then they're going to try to just pull the rug. And what right now we're seeing is, well, they maybe not be able to pull that rug, but they're unraveling the weave and they're pulling it as hard as they can. Okay, and they're trying to unravel the whole thing in an attempt to completely take over. And in a way that's so unethical and blatant. And where is this going? Okay, where is this going? Statements like that which we saw today. And if we could go into it just a touch more, we're going to be running out of time here. But one thing that was said, and when we were in this hearing, it was so hard because what was said by one individual, and I can't remember what his name was, but he basically said the Russians, you can run into one in the grocery store and have a conversation. And Sessions said, he smiled and he says, yeah. In other words, these people are trying to say on the right, the conservative right, are trying to say, look, you could run into a Russian in the grocery store and have a conversation. And that would end up being somewhat like that reception. What are these people getting at? It just is so ludicrous. So this, it's to say that every Russian is bad is just also in and of itself not a good thing. I understand what they're getting at in this investigation, and I don't want to light end it because it is a serious matter. But what they're trying to get at, and how far the left is trying to get at and how far the right is having to go to kind of explain it, it's just outlandish. And the American people are just, they don't know how to cope with it. And, when we look at, the whole thing, when we look at Harris and how she attacked Sessions, she just went at him and she wouldn't even let him answer. And then he was trying to answer and then she cut him off and she's like, no, just tell me. And he got frustrated. Well, she's a first term senator and they're trying to give her a boost to the top. fast track like they did Obama. But you know what? This girl, she just completely wiped herself out. What she showed is how weak she is. She showed that she did not have any sort of reserve or resolve or any kind of ability to temper down her intensity to facilitate a good response from Sessions and get the information that the American public deserve. Because what she doesn't understand is this is not about people wanting to watch her, in her power play. This is about, this is a court of public opinion. People want to see what's going on. I mean, that's about what all this is. And the bigger thing is when she did that, when she shut him down, she showed how callous she was. She didn't really want an answer. When she didn't get the answer she wanted, she just thought she'd go to another question. And when he wanted clarification, I mean, this is our top government official, somebody who's currently sitting AG, and here she is a first-term senator. How dare she? How dare she? It'd be one thing to ask a question and expect an answer and say, sir, I requested a yes or no. Well, I cannot give you a yes or no. I mean, it just pragmatic back and forth. And that's not what we're getting. What we're getting is an entire attempt to undermine completely our entire system. And so what we had is then Senator Lankford, he basically read the statement given by the organizers of the reception in question. And I encourage you, and I may post him reading this, because what he did was he basically read this, and I mean, it just blows away everything that's been said in the entire investigation of the day in the hearings of Sessions, AG Sessions. I mean, it's unclear to me how these powerheads of Congress on this committee can sit there and chew down our AG, our current AG, without recognizing the facts, which are these sorts of reports that are filed. And one of them is this particular reception questionnaire that was responded to, in which the reception organizers clarified many different points. And it was very valuable. So I'm going to go ahead and try to find that for you and post it. I think you might find it of interest. And then there's the other thing is that, I think that when Senator Cotton literally suggested there was or could be a covert operation at the reception of the Mayflower, I just couldn't stand it. I mean, to see Jeff Sessions put in that sort of position, I mean, especially given his recusal and everything else, it was just out of this world. And then when Kamala Harris, she basically wanted to rush the hearing on very important questions. Her questions weren't necessarily bad, okay? It was more that the way she went about it. Okay? She was out of line, and I say that categorically, out of line. And I'm not the only one who felt that way. Some people on the left also felt that she was very strong, which is unfortunate. I can't believe that people would think that, but people do. But on the whole, what today was, and I'm going to recap it for you, is this is an attempt to take down our president. This is not about the Russians. Okay, this is not about the Russians at all. And I think it would be wise for certain individuals to be looked into and their backgrounds to be checked thoroughly. When you look at all of this as a whole, it is more than clear that this is not about the Russians. It's not. If it were about the Russians, we would be asking Obama some serious questions. If it were about the Russians, we'd be asking Hillary some serious questions. And we would go all the way back to Uranium One, which is now 100% owned corporation by the Russians, which was accumulated over time through different sorts of fallouts and this and that and the other and yada, yada, yada. But that whole thing is tied to the Clintons and goes all the way back. And when we look at that, we look at donations to her foundation, we look at friends and family donating here, money's flying everywhere for years, decades, literally decades. And then the transition finalizes not that long ago. And then now Uranium One holds the, is 100% Russian owned and owns 20% of our reserves for uranium. It's outrageous. So when we look at Russia, we have to look at maybe a bigger picture. And then when we look at Comey, we have to think about what he's done. He is literally undermining our entire governmental system. I mean, he's setting a bad pathway for other people to think that it's okay to leak government information, sensitive information that could put our nation at risk, even if they're in the types of positions which have that sort of privileged information. It's just outrageous. It's outrageous. So I'm hoping that more comes of this, and it's not about the Russians, and I hope that people are looked into. I really do. As we kind of wrap up, I want to go into Obamacare. It looks like they may not be going into Obamacare, that means the Senate, too much, because we've got all of these different kinds of bills that are coming up, and reauthorization sorts of actions that need to be taken. But what I want to do is I want to encourage everyone, you need to call your senators and you need to tell them, look, we need to make headway. We have to pass something. Okay, repeal and replace, you have to approve something. The other concern is the taxes that go along with Obamacare. Okay, we have to fund Obamacare. We have to fund the medical system somehow, is what the Democrats and even the moderate conservatives are saying. Okay, fine. You know, we can't keep all these taxes. It's just counterintuitive to the American people and their ability to keep food on their table and boost the economy. So we have to find some middle ground. So I suggest that you contact your congressperson and you say, look, you've passed other things. Why can't you get this done for me? This is what I want. This is what makes sense to my family. What are you going to do? And then pressure them and talk to your friends about it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you the phone number. It's 202-224-3121. You can also contact them at house.gov or senate.gov. You can also look up other resources on my website, which is aaroncruz.com, or send me an email, an inquiry to info@aaroncruz.com. And also be sure to like me on and the platform on social media. You can find me pretty much everywhere, but my political page, is at Wagner Girlie, at WAGNERGIRLE. That's WAGNERGIRLE on Twitter. I also want to remind you that we want to grow together. We want to find common solutions, find common ground. If you ever have any questions, I'll help you. I'll answer whatever I can. Do not hesitate to reach out. We're in this together. I want to thank you for joining me tonight, Aaron Cruz, for Political Core, the Aaron Cruz Show. Thank you so much. Please join me again this next Thursday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for the Queen of Politics. So we have a little bit more fun that night when we talk the issues, always with information you can use to make positive change in your community, in your state, and in the nation. I hope you all have a very blessed evening. God bless you, and God bless America.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about Political Core and the Aaron Cruz Show, visit us online at aaroncruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com. Thank you for joining us, and see you at the same time and the same place next week.